Some men don't run away because they don't like you. They run because they like you more than they're comfortable admitting. And once you recognize these 5 hidden behaviors, you'll never look at mixed signals the same way again. Many women assume that if a man is interested, he'll confidently make his feelings known. But attraction doesn't always work that way. When a man wants you deeply yet is trying to suppress those emotions, his reactions become much harder to read. One of the clearest signs isn't what he says. It's how he responds when he believes another man might capture your attention. Even if he never admits it, a little jealousy often slips through the cracks. Imagine you're telling him about a conversation you had with a male coworker, or mentioning that someone complimented you. If he has no emotional investment, he'll usually react with casual interest and move on. But if he's secretly fighting his feelings, the energy often changes. He may ask who the person is, how long you've known him, or whether you're spending time together. On the surface, those questions sound harmless. Underneath them, however, is a quiet desire to understand whether someone else is becoming important in your life. The interesting part is that he may not even realize he's doing it. Jealousy isn't always loud or dramatic. It doesn't always look like anger or possessiveness. Sometimes it's as subtle as his expression changing for a brief moment, becoming quieter than usual, or suddenly asking more questions than the situation actually requires. Those small emotional shifts are difficult to fake because they're driven by instinct rather than careful planning. You might also notice that he becomes a little more attentive after hearing about another man. Perhaps he starts texting more often, shows greater interest in your day, or makes a stronger effort to keep the conversation going. This isn't necessarily about competition alone. It's often the moment he realizes that if he keeps hiding his feelings forever, someone else may have the courage to step forward. That possibility forces emotions he has been trying to control to rise to the surface. Another clue appears in the way he pays attention to your social life. He casually asks who you'll be spending time with over the weekend, or seems unusually interested when you mention going out. He might laugh and pretend he's just making conversation, but his curiosity often has a deeper emotional reason. People naturally become more aware of potential rivals when they care about someone more than they're willing to admit. Even on social media, these feelings can quietly reveal themselves. He notices who comments on your posts, reacts when you upload photos, or suddenly becomes more active after seeing you spend time with someone else. He may never directly ask whether you're dating another man, yet his behavior suggests that the question is already on his mind. He's gathering information without exposing the reason he's interested in knowing. That said, it's important to make a healthy distinction between hidden attraction and unhealthy possessiveness. Genuine interest doesn't give someone the right to control who you talk to or make you feel guilty for having friends. A man who truly respects you may experience moments of jealousy, but he still honors your independence. His emotions might be difficult to hide, yet he doesn't use them as an excuse to manipulate your choices. Instead of focusing on one isolated reaction, pay attention to the overall pattern. Does he consistently become more engaged whenever another man enters the conversation? Does he seem eager to understand your relationship status without directly asking? Does he quietly increase his effort after realizing someone else could have your attention? When several of these behaviors appear together over time, they often point to feelings that are stronger than he's prepared to express. For your part, there's no need to test him by intentionally making him jealous. Healthy relationships are built on honesty, not emotional games. If his feelings are real, they will reveal themselves naturally through repeated actions. The goal isn't to provoke a reaction, it's to observe one. A man who wants you badly but is fighting his emotions can often hide his words. But controlling every emotional response is much harder. Sooner or later, those feelings begin to surface in the smallest moments, and jealousy is often one of the first places where the truth quietly appears. There are moments when a conversation has absolutely no practical reason to continue, yet somehow your phone lights up with another message from him. It isn't about anything urgent. He isn't making a grand romantic gesture. Instead, he sends a funny meme, asks for your opinion on something simple, or brings up a topic that could have easily been left alone. At first glance, these interactions seem ordinary, but when they happen repeatedly, they often reveal a man who is looking for reasons to stay close without openly admitting why. Someone who has no emotional interest usually lets conversations end naturally. They don't spend mental energy thinking of new ways to reconnect. A man who is fighting his feelings, however, often does the exact opposite. He wants your attention, enjoys talking to you, and misses your presence, but he's not yet comfortable saying those things out loud. Creating casual excuses to reach out feels much safer than exposing emotions that could leave him vulnerable. You may notice that he asks questions he could easily answer himself. Maybe he wants a recommendation for a movie, even though countless reviews are available online. He asks where you bought something, requests your opinion on a minor decision, or sends a message about a topic you once discussed. The question itself isn't always important. The real purpose is keeping the connection alive. He wants another conversation without making it obvious that the conversation is what he was really after. Sometimes he shares little pieces of his day that don't seem significant. A picture of his morning coffee, a funny sign he passed on the street, or a song that reminded him of something you once said. These aren't life-changing updates. They're quiet invitations for you to become part of his everyday world. When someone consistently includes you in small moments, it often means you're already occupying a much bigger space in their mind than they're willing to admit. Another detail worth noticing is how quickly he responds when you engage. Even if he waited hours before sending the first message, once the conversation starts, he suddenly becomes present. Replies come faster, questions become more thoughtful, and the exchange feels effortless. That's often because the hardest part wasn't talking to you. It was finding a reason to start talking in the first place. His curiosity also begins to extend beyond surface-level conversation. He remembers things you've mentioned before and circles back to them naturally. He asks how your interview went, whether your friend is feeling better, or if you ever visited the restaurant you were excited about. These follow-up questions show that he isn't just making conversation, he's paying attention. Attention is one of the strongest forms of emotional investment because people naturally remember what carries emotional importance. It's equally important to recognize what healthy effort looks like. A man who genuinely wants to stay connected doesn't only appear when he's bored, lonely, or looking for validation. He reaches out consistently, not just conveniently. His messages don't revolve entirely around himself. He shows genuine interest in your experiences, your thoughts, and your feelings. That balance is what separates authentic connection from occasional attention. At the same time, avoid the temptation to interpret every single text as proof of hidden love. One message means very little. Even two or three don't tell the whole story. What matters is whether these moments become a consistent habit. Does he repeatedly find reasons to check in? Does he continue investing in conversations even when there's nothing obvious to gain? Does he seem disappointed when the conversation ends and subtly look for another chance to restart it later? Those patterns reveal far more than isolated interactions ever could. The smartest response is not to chase or overanalyze every message. Let him take initiative. Give him room to show whether these conversations become more intentional over time. If his feelings are real, the excuses will gradually become less necessary. Random questions will turn into genuine interest in spending time together. Casual conversations will become more personal. The small reasons he invents today are often the first steps toward honest conversations he'll eventually be ready to have once he stops fighting what he truly feels. Few experiences are more confusing than watching a man grow emotionally close to you, only to become distant soon afterward. One day he's engaged, asking thoughtful questions, laughing with you, and making it feel like the connection is naturally deepening. Then, without any obvious explanation, he becomes quieter. His messages slow down, he seems more reserved, or he creates a little more space between you. It's easy to assume his feelings disappeared overnight, but that isn't always what's happening. For many men, Emotional closeness feels exciting and intimidating at the same time. Wanting someone means opening the door to disappointment, rejection, and vulnerability. As long as the relationship stays casual, he feels safe because there isn't much at risk. But the moment he realizes his feelings are becoming stronger, the situation changes. Suddenly, there's something valuable to lose, and that realization can make him instinctively pull back. This reaction isn't necessarily a conscious decision. He may not wake up thinking, I'm going to ignore her today. Instead, his emotions create internal conflict. One part of him enjoys the growing connection and wants more of it. Another part begins asking uncomfortable questions. What if she doesn't feel the same way? What if I get hurt? What if this changes everything? Those doubts can become louder than his desire, causing him to retreat just when things seem to be moving forward. You may notice that this pattern often follows meaningful moments. Perhaps the two of you had a long conversation that felt unusually personal. Maybe you laughed together for hours, shared stories about your past, or opened up about things you don't usually tell other people. Instead of becoming even closer the next day, he suddenly seems harder to reach. That shift can feel confusing, but sometimes emotional intimacy itself is what triggered his hesitation. Another sign is that his distance rarely feels complete. Even while giving you space, he still pays attention. He watches your stories, responds occasionally, or checks in after a few days as though nothing happened. If he truly wanted to walk away, disappearing would usually be much easier. Instead, he seems caught between staying close and protecting himself. That push and pull behavior reflects uncertainty rather than indifference. His personality also matters. Some men have learned through past experiences that expressing emotions led to disappointment or heartbreak. Others grew up believing they should always appear strong and in control. As a result, whenever they begin caring deeply about someone, their first instinct is to regain emotional balance by stepping back. It's not because the feelings disappeared. It's because the feelings suddenly became real enough to make them uncomfortable. Still, it's important not to excuse endless inconsistency. Everyone needs space occasionally, but healthy relationships cannot survive on constant emotional whiplash. If a man repeatedly disappears for long periods, refuses to communicate, or leaves you feeling anxious all the time without any effort to improve, those behaviors deserve attention. Hidden feelings are one thing. Avoiding responsibility is something entirely different. Rather than reacting emotionally every time he creates distance, observe what happens after the pause. Does he come back and genuinely reconnect? Does he make an effort to continue building the relationship? Does he seem relieved to hear from you once the emotional pressure settles? Those responses reveal much more than the temporary withdrawal itself. A man who is wrestling with real feelings often finds his way back because the connection still matters to him. The healthiest approach is to remain calm and allow his actions to speak over time. Chasing him the moment he pulls away usually increases the pressure he's already feeling. Giving him room, on the other hand, allows him to recognize what he truly wants without being forced into a decision. If his feelings are genuine, emotional distance won't erase them. In many cases, it simply becomes part of the internal battle he's trying to win. And once that battle starts becoming too exhausting, he'll begin replacing confusion with clarity, revealing his emotions through stronger, more consistent actions instead of uncertain retreats. Actions have a remarkable way of exposing emotions that words are still trying to hide. A man may tell himself to stay calm, act casual, and avoid revealing too much, but his behavior often tells a completely different story. The more he tries to appear unaffected, the more likely it is that small, unconscious habits begin to reveal what is really happening beneath the surface. Take a moment to notice how he behaves when you're in the same room. Around other people, he may seem relaxed and confident. Yet when you enter the conversation, something changes. He suddenly becomes more aware of what he's saying. He laughs a little harder at your jokes, listens more carefully when you speak, or seems unusually focused on your reactions. These aren't things most people plan. They're natural responses that happen when someone holds emotional significance. Body language is especially revealing because it operates faster than conscious thought. Before someone has time to decide how they want to appear, their body often reacts on its own. He may instinctively face his body toward you, even when talking to someone else. His eyes search for you in a crowded room. Without realizing it, he mirrors your posture, your smile, or even your pace when walking beside you. These subtle behaviors create a sense of connection because the mind naturally imitates people it feels drawn toward. Another detail many women overlook is the way he watches you when he thinks you're not paying attention. Perhaps you catch him looking across the room, only for him to quickly glance away the moment your eyes meet. Maybe he notices when you're laughing with friends or quietly observes your reactions during a group conversation. Those brief moments aren't always intentional. They're often automatic, driven by genuine curiosity and emotional attraction rather than a conscious decision to stare. His voice can change as well. Around you, he may speak more softly, become slightly nervous, or choose his words more carefully than he does with everyone else. Some men become more full, while others become unusually quiet. The specific reaction varies from person to person, but the common thread is that your presence affects his behavior in noticeable ways. Emotional investment has a way of changing someone's natural rhythm without them even realizing it. You may also notice that he seems eager to help, even with small things. He offers assistance before anyone else does, remembers things you've mentioned needing, or checks whether you're comfortable without making a big deal about it. These gestures aren't necessarily dramatic acts of romance. Instead, they're quiet expressions of care. When someone genuinely wants you in their life, they often begin looking for opportunities to make your life a little easier. One of the strongest clues appears in how differently he treats you compared to everyone else. If he's naturally friendly with everyone, that's simply part of his personality. But if his attention, patience, and energy noticeably increase when he's with you, that's worth paying attention to. Maybe he remembers your stories while forgetting everyone else's. Maybe he notices when your mood changes before anyone else does. Maybe he gives you his full attention, even in a busy room. Those differences often reveal where his emotional priorities truly lie. At the same time, it's wise not to build conclusions around a single gesture. Good body language should support other signs you've already noticed, not replace them. A lingering glance, a warm smile, or thoughtful attention becomes meaningful when it consistently appears alongside genuine effort, respectful communication, and continued interest over time. Healthy attraction is reflected in patterns, not isolated moments. Instead of asking yourself whether every little movement has a hidden meaning, look at the overall picture. Does he seem more alive, attentive, and engaged whenever you're around? Do his actions consistently communicate interest even when his words remain careful? Does he naturally create an atmosphere where you feel seen, heard, and valued? Those are the moments that matter most. Because while it's possible to control a sentence, it's much harder to control countless unconscious behaviors. Eventually, the feelings he's been trying so hard to hide begin revealing themselves through the way he looks at you, listens to you, and quietly makes space for you in every interaction. Eventually, there comes a point where hiding genuine feelings becomes more exhausting than expressing them. A man can only battle his emotions for so long before something has to change. If his interest in you is real, there is usually a moment when fear begins to lose its grip, and that's when the biggest transformation takes place. The mixed signals that once left you confused slowly begin to disappear, replaced by actions that feel clear, intentional, and consistent. Up until this stage, you may have noticed hesitation. He reached out, then pulled away. He showed interest, then became quiet. He looked for excuses to talk, but avoided saying what was truly on his mind. All of those behaviors reflected an internal struggle. Once he stops resisting his emotions, however, his energy shifts in a way that's difficult to miss. Instead of wondering whether he wants to hear from you, you begin noticing that he's making a genuine effort to stay connected. Communication becomes one of the first things to change. You no longer have to question whether he'll disappear after a meaningful conversation. His messages become more natural and dependable. He checks in because he wants to know how you're doing, not because he's searching for another excuse to start talking. The uncertainty that once surrounded every interaction begins to fade, and in its place comes a sense of emotional stability. His priorities also become much clearer. Before, he may have claimed he was too busy or unsure about making plans. Now he starts creating time instead of explaining why he doesn't have any. People always make room for what genuinely matters to them. When a man decides to stop fighting his feelings, spending time with you stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like a priority. That difference shows itself through actions rather than promises. Another noticeable change is his willingness to include you in different parts of his life. He becomes more open about what he's doing, introduces you to people who matter to him, and shares thoughts or experiences he previously kept to himself. Emotional walls that once seemed impossible to climb gradually come down because he no longer sees vulnerability as something to avoid. Instead, he begins viewing honesty as the only way to build something meaningful. You may also notice that his confidence grows. Earlier, every conversation seemed carefully measured, almost as if he were afraid of saying the wrong thing. Once he accepts his feelings, he becomes more direct. He compliments you without overthinking it. He expresses appreciation more freely. He starts making plans for the future instead of focusing only on the present moment. His actions begin matching the emotions that were hidden for so long. This doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes perfect. Even someone who has accepted his feelings can still have moments of uncertainty. The difference is that he no longer lets fear control his behavior. Instead of running from emotional closeness, he chooses to work through discomfort because the relationship has become more important than protecting himself from every possible disappointment. It's also important to remember that consistency is the true measure of sincerity. Anyone can have one emotional conversation or make one romantic gesture. What matters is what happens afterward. Does he continue showing up? Does he keep making an effort when life becomes busy? Does he communicate even when things aren't easy? Real commitment isn't proven by grand declarations. It's proven by dependable actions repeated over time. Looking back, you'll often realize that the hidden signals from the beginning were leading to this moment all along. The quiet jealousy, the random excuses to message you, the emotional pullbacks, and the unconscious body language were all pieces of a much larger picture. They reflected a man trying to understand emotions he wasn't yet ready to accept. Once that internal battle ends, confusion gives way to clarity. Perhaps the most valuable lesson is this: don't fall in love with hidden signals alone. Appreciate them for what they are, small clues, not final answers. The relationship you deserve is one where you don't have to decode every message or question every silence. The right man eventually reaches a place where his actions speak louder than his fears. When he truly wants you and chooses to stop fighting his feelings, you won't have to search for secret signs anymore. His consistency, his effort, and his willingness to show up will say everything his hidden emotions once couldn't.